What if Issei was an Arrancar? Part 4. I hope you all enjoy, and I'm sorry if you have to hear any mic problems. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. Issei was walking to school with Konako. He felt an eerie presence, but he didn't really mind it. He didn't really think too much of it. Currently, he was thinking about the weird dream he had yesterday. He had a dream with two dragons, one that was completely bones, had completely dark eyes, and dark blood was dripping out of it, its mouth, its eyes, everywhere. And he saw an Oni that was completely pitch black with red markings on it, and completely black flames coming from the eyes. He was really curious about that, but he put that in the back of his mind, and he just decided, let's go ahead and have a good day at school, I guess, with Konako. He was walking with Konako into the school. As soon as he stepped foot into the premises of the school, he noticed a weird feeling in the pit of his stomach. And everything in his mind was saying, look up in the sky. There's something wrong. And once he looked upwards, he saw an opening appear. And he saw this one man in all white and had blue hair with a mask. And he doesn't know who this is exactly. But something on the inside of him is saying, this man is strong. Do not go against him. All of his instincts were saying, get away from the school. And Issei was about to do this, about to follow his instincts. But he realized that Konako was nearby, right next to him. And she noticed his worried face and expression. And Issei looked at her and said, I suggest we leave. The school is not safe. And she asked, why do you say so? And he calmly looks upwards, directly at the completely white clothed, blue-haired man with a mask and a hole in his chest. But when he notices the hole in the chest, he thinks that's similar to me. I have a hole in my chest too. Is he exactly what I am? I need to ask him some questions. Even if my instincts are telling me to get away, I need to get these questions answered. He says it with a monotone voice, like he says everything with. And he tells Konako to get away from school. Konako says, I can handle myself, you know. I'm not exactly human. You should probably get away, though. Because, well, you are human, right? And Issei says, no, I'm not a human. I don't know what the hell I am, but I can tell I'm not a human, unless you see a hole in people's hearts every day. And Konako said, wait, what do you mean by hole in your heart? And Issei says, I know you've seen it before, but just so you know that it wasn't an hallucination. And Issei immediately just walks towards the school, and doesn't walk in, but he walks around to the back of the school. And he's walking closer to this person in all white with blue hair. And he looks up and says, very loudly, why are you here? And who are you? And what are you? Could you please tell me? And all that happens is the man with blue hair looks down and just scowls at him and says, I'm what's known as a Grimmjow, and you're what's known as... And he fires this red beam out of his fingertip, and it shoots directly towards where Issei's heart would have been, and it fires straight through. But there was no blood or anything, which had the blue-haired man in shock, until he notices once his Sero, which you know it's a Sero by now, burned off the front of his clothing, that there was a hole where his heart was. And he's asking himself, was there ever another Arrancar in the human world? In this sector of the human world? I don't think there was. And he just screams out, Oi! aren't you supposed to be in Las Noches? Arrancar? And Issei merely says, what's an Arrancar? And this causes the blue-haired man to laugh out loud. It says, you don't even know what you are. But how the hell is that possible? Arrancars are hollows that have grown by eating other hollows and turning into an Arrancar. How did you not know this? Issei merely looks at him with a puzzled face. Before Grimmjow, which we know it's not Grimmjow, because he merely says, oh, also kid, my name's Grimmjow. I figured you want to know what my name is before I send you to hell. And as soon as Issei hears this, he wonders what he meant by send him to hell. But all of a sudden, feels a pain in his stomach. He starts coughing up blood, and he starts flying backwards. He doesn't know what happened, but he saw the blue-haired man just move once, which is known as Grimmjow. He saw him move just once, but he couldn't see a single thing that was happening. And all of a sudden, he looked down in his body, and he sees 5 fist imprints into his gut. And he's puking up blood while being flung backwards from the punch and the impact and the sheer force. And he's wondering, how does he fight this man exactly if he can't see him? And right when he's thinking this, he's about to punch forward because he's expecting Grimmjow just to blitz him. But no, he was behind him. And once he punches forward, Grimmjow, who's behind him, says, you missed. Whispers that into his ear and says, Sero. And puts a palm right towards his face. And he gets hit point blank in the face by a Sero. And he flies through the ORC building. Which, when he flies through the ORC building, alerts Rias Grimory and her barrage of what's happening. Because there were tons of barriers around the ORC building. So that anyone that is not invited can't come in. But no. Issei was flung so violently through that it just bashed through the barrier with his own body, causing him to take more damage. And when he flung through the building directly, he flew all the way through. And the ORC is now alerted to this, there's a supernatural on campus that's causing a ruckus. So they immediately get out of the ORC building from the top floor, which Issei went through the bottom floor and flung all the way through, mind you, out of the building and into the woods. Yeah. And Rias Grimory just jumps down out of the building and looks to the side and sees Grimmjow, which he merely just looks at her and says, Oi, Tits McGee. Eisen gave you and Lucifer a chance. And you fucked up that chance. So what happens next is your fault. And he merely pulls out a Sero out of his palm of his hand, just creates one, and just blasts it towards Rias. And Rias does a barrier. And the barrier does not hold. The barrier immediately shatters on contact with the Sero. But it did get a little bit of a change in direction. She changed direction just slightly, to where it went right past her head, right beside her, and cut off some locks of hair. And the locks of hair fell to the ground, and Rias Grimory was very shocked. But she couldn't process the shock because before she could even try to think of retaliating back with her destruction magic, well, Grimmjow was already in front of her and punched straight through her chest. And his hand's about to rip out her heart before all of a sudden he feels a pain in his face, right in the side of his cheek. And he looks aside and he sees that Issei has planted a punch straight to his face. And he just merely laughs at this because it didn't make him fall back or falter anymore. It didn't make him falter at all. And he didn't move or even budge. He merely just pushed his fist upwards, away from him, with just his sheer head turning to the side to look at Issei. It already broke Issei's wrist. And all that Grimmjow said was weak. And he just kicked Issei in the stomach, made him vomit, and grabbed him by the head, removed his other arm, which was inside of Reese's chest, didn't rip out her heart or anything, but just merely slapped her away, and started repeatedly beating Issei in the face, punching him over and over in the face until you could hear cracks of bones all over his body because, well, his face is already breaking. The skull is fracturing. But he's landing punches in the chest, the ribs, everywhere in his body. You could hear his ribs cracking. You could even hear the sound of a wet, piercing sound. And Issei's rib has pierced his lungs, which is making Issei bleed out 10 times faster. Because he already had open wounds from, well, the Rainier fight. But they healed slightly faster than normal, but they weren't completely healed yet. Issei, however, looked at Grimmjow with pure hatred in his eyes. And this caught Grimmjow off guard, because Grimmjow was kind of thinking he was similar to one person he knew, which was known as Ukiura before. But now that he's showing some actual emotion, he's not even close to similar. Ukiura actually showed no emotion. But this brat right here is showing some emotion after just getting the shit beat out of him a little bit. What would happen if I push it a little more, is what Grimmjow says, before he throws Issei all the way into the air, and just fires 5 Seros, and they're all going directly at Issei. And Issei merely pulls out his sword, and slashes all 5 of the Seros. And he just blitzes towards Grimmjow, but he doesn't know exactly how fast he's going. But this actually was at such a high speed that it surprised Grimmjow temporarily. Grimmjow didn't notice that Issei was already in front of him, but right when he did, all he did was just pimp slap him, and he slapped him like 50 meters away. But Grimmjow was impressed because he couldn't even see him until the last second. And if Issei would have just done a move a little bit quicker, then he would have got him. But no, Grimmjow hasn't taken it easy on Issei. As soon as Issei is flying 50 meters away to the left, all that happens is Grimmjow just uses Sato and teleports right behind him. And merely grabs his leg and starts slamming him all across the ground, pushing him into mountains, punching him into the concrete, slamming him against the school, pretty much everywhere. And Issei is literally being used as some type of stress doll right now. More like he's being used as a punching bag or a chew toy for Grimmjow. Issei is bleeding from every direction in his body. He has blood dripping from his forehead. He has fractures in his skull. He has broken ribs. He has a rib puncturing into his lung currently, so he cannot breathe properly. And he's also coughing out blood immensely. And his legs are pretty much shattered now. And Issei is almost going unconscious. But he hears a voice scream out, "Issei, I'm here to help you." And he looks to the side and sees Konako. And before Issei could even say for Konako to get out of here, Grimmjow immediately is in front of Konako and grabs Konako's face and squeezes as hard as possible. And Issei starts hearing cracks of bones and starts noticing that Konako's face is getting contorted in pain. That her actual bones in her face, her actual skull is being cracked by this blue-haired son of a bitch known as Grimmjow. And Issei does not want to see this continue. He puts up all of the strength he can and gets back up. Even though he has broken legs, broken bones, this won't stop him. He gets up, he stares at Grimmjow, and screams as loud as he can, "Resurrection, the empty dragon and the Oni." And all of a sudden, a dark aura emits out of Issei, with rage and anger being sensed from the aura. Grimmjow backs away from Konako and gets into his position and says Pantera. Before he could even say it, he was immediately grabbed from a portal to Las Noches by Aizen himself. And once Issei transformed into his state, he was expecting to beat up or try to attack Grimmjow. But all that happened was him having 2 giant bone wings and bone armor on him, with his bones from his flesh popping out, and 3 dragon heads on his back, having beams ready to fire out of them, and a bone mask being on top of his head that showed an Oni and a dragon on it. 1/2 Oni, 1/2 dragon. And he had a horn coming out of his left side, with his eyes being completely pure black pupils, with black blood coming out of them, pouring out, same out of his mouth, and his teeth being very sharp, exactly like a dragon, and his actual markings on him that were tribal markings that were completely pitch red, and his skin turned completely charcoal black. And Issei noticed that, well, his opponent is gone. So he merely just says, Resurrection unreleased. And merely just reverses it. And Issei merely passes out afterwards. But Rias and all of them who witnessed his transformation noticed how incredible the amount of power was. It was so incredible they thought they were in the presence of Lucifer himself. Or, better yet, someone stronger than him. Much more powerful, omnipotent, omnipotent, almost. And this is where I'm going to end What If Issei was in Arrancar Part 4. I hope you guys enjoy.